listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. It's the race that historically stops the nation, but this year, the Melbourne Cup's bringing in a whole new generation of viewers that, well, you might not expect.
Racing has a perception of being something a little bit sort of grander, a little bit old school, and in order to grab a new market, no question, they have to get with the times.
That deep dive into horse racing's growing popularity among young Aussies and how the multi-billion-dollar industry is pulling it off is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spyrou. It's Tuesday, the 4th of November.
Hey Tara, and to you listening. Convicted triple murderer Erin Patterson has formally lodged an appeal against her guilty verdicts. In September, Patterson was sentenced to life in prison for the death cap mushroom murders of her estranged husband's family members Don and Gail Patterson, Heather Wilkinson, and for the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson. She's eligible for parole after serving 33 years behind bars. By then, she'll be over 80 years old.
Yesterday, Patterson's lawyers submitted paperwork to Melbourne's Court of Appeal, revealing the 51-year-old will be fighting her conviction, meaning she's arguing that the guilty verdict was wrong overall, as opposed to, say, the length of her sentence. Now, the argument she and her lawyers will use to make that case to the court is yet to be revealed. Meanwhile, the Director of Public Prosecutions is simultaneously appealing Patterson's sentence, arguing that it's manifestly inadequate for the murder of 3 people and attempted murder of a 4th.
In the appeal, the DPP states the judge made a mistake when handing down the sentence and instead a harsher one should be given. At the time of her sentencing, Justice Christopher Beale did say Patterson's act fell into the worst category and that she showed no pity to her victim. So it will be interesting to see what the Court of Appeal decides here. Erin Patterson's expected to remain in protective custody for the remainder of her life sentence in jail due to her notoriety.
A 32-year-old British man's been charged with the attempted murder of 11 people and assault occasioning bodily harm after a mass stabbing on a London-bound train over the weekend. Anthony Williams fronted a court in Peterborough in England's east yesterday on 12 charges, with authorities since releasing a statement saying they're now investigating whether the UK national is also linked with 3 other incidents in the area, including the stabbing of a 14-year-old in the city centre last week.
Williams was arrested after allegedly attacking multiple train-goers on a service leaving Doncaster on Saturday local time, with one witness telling the Associated Press she recalls seeing a man launch from his seat before hearing other passengers yell, "He's got a knife."
Everyone's running. A guy next to me is holding his arm covered in blood, saying he got stabbed, and he was right next to me on the train, so that was quite terrifying.
Meanwhile, another passenger told the BBC he saw an older man block the attacker from stabbing a young girl.
One of the older guys was an absolute hero, blocked it with his head, and he's got this gash. He had this gash on his head. He's got his gash on his neck, and he's we're giving him a jackets to keep the pressure on the blood.
11 people were hospitalised, including a staff member from the train who's since been labelled a hero after reportedly also trying to protect passengers from the knifeman. He remains in a critical condition in hospital.
The driver of the train, a former Iraq War veteran, has also been praised for his quick response, having diverted the train to make an emergency stop where armed police were able to board the service and arrest Williams within minutes. Authorities maintain the incident wasn't a terror attack and they're still working to determine a motive. Williams hasn't entered a plea, with the matter returning to court next month.
To the US now, where Hollywood director and actor Justin Baldoni's lost his massive $611 million defamation lawsuit against co-star Blake Lively after it was scrapped by a district court judge. It comes after the actor missed a court deadline last month to file more documents to continue his claim.
The pair who co-starred in the 2024 movie It Ends With Us have been locked into a messy legal battle since Lively filed a lawsuit against Baldoni last December, accusing him of sexual harassment and waging a smear campaign against her. Baldoni hit back in January this year, going after her husband Ryan Reynolds, their publicist, and the New York Times in a countersuit, accusing them of civil extortion, invasion of privacy, and defamation.
Now, his countersuit was first dismissed in June, with the judge at the time pretty much saying you can't sue someone over statements made in an active lawsuit. Baldoni appealed and was given a chance to file an amended complaint, but as we've since learnt, he didn't do that, which means his defamation case is pretty much done and dusted.
But while that's over for now, Blake Lively's original lawsuit against Baldoni is ongoing, with that scheduled to go to trial in March next year. Now, we do have a deep dive on this case, including the fact that T-Swift or Taylor Swift is involved. So if you want to hear more on that, we'll drop a link in the show notes.
Well, how does running the AC and telly for a few hours a day for free sound? Well, that's what the government's promising, with millions of Aussies set to access at least 3 hours a day of free solar power, even if they don't have rooftop panels.
Yeah, it's called the Solar Sharer Scheme, and it'll require retailers to offer free electricity to homes in the middle of the day to residents in New South Wales, Southeast Queensland, lucky you and I, Chris, and South Australia from July next year. Now, the government's looking to extend it to other states by 2027, with Energy and Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen saying it makes sure that every last ray of sunshine is powering Aussie homes, cutting solar energy wastage, all the while leading to cheaper bills for both owners and renters. And that's, quote, good for the planet and it's good for your pocket.
Yeah, in its announcement, the government also says Aussies with smart meters or plugs could schedule appliances like washing machines, dishwashers, EV chargers, and even air conditioners to make the most of the free 3-hour window.
Which I personally think is a fantastic idea, because as someone who installed solar in the last year, Chris, we saw our electricity bill drop by I would say a tenth of the price now of what it used to be. So best thing we ever did, and I think if more people can utilise that, this is fantastic.
Yes, well, someone who doesn't think it's fantastic is the Australian Energy Council, who represent a bunch of retailers. Now, look, we do know that AGL and Red Energy already offer free periods to some of their solar customers, but essentially what the Australian Energy Council is saying is that the government jumped the gun with this announcement. They didn't consult enough with retailers, and that could have unexpected consequences. They're saying it could have a long-term impact on innovation, so essentially retailers feeling like they're out of the loop with the government and not wanting to come to the table when it comes to solutions. However, there are a bunch of green energy and clean energy providers who have welcomed this statement today, saying it will be a massive cost of living help to a bunch of Australians.
Now, who is the coolest or most famous person that has ever rocked up to your school as a kid? Well, for the students of one Western Sydney school, they can add former world #1 tennis player Ash Barty to the list.
Yeah, the 4-time Grand Slam winner visited Redeemer Baptist School at North Parramatta yesterday, taken to the court with the kids, teaching them everything from serves to forehands and backhands.
It makes me smile because it takes me back to my journey, the beginning of my journey, when I was picking up a racket for the first time.
Oh, well, now this wasn't a random visit, I should say. The school had actually entered a competition with 100 others, the Ash Barty Schools Challenge, and it was designed to try and encourage school kids to get involved with tennis success, but they had to submit some photos and videos showcasing how they're embracing their tennis skills and the challenges set by Barty. They won, so she rocked up. And I mean, what a very cool claim to fame. Have you ever had something similar happen, Chris? Or, I don't know, a celeb rock up to your school class or maybe uni or even workplace?
Yeah, well, I mean, when it comes to school, the only one I can think of at the moment is that stupid puppet Healthy Harold.
I was about to say the same. That is I don't think that counts. Not a celeb, but I was thinking the exact same.
Not a celeb at all, but then when it comes to work, obviously, we do get to work in a really cool place. So the most famous person I've probably bumped into here, and this is... not the most famous, but the one that I was most excited by was Jessica Malboy. And I actually had to run through, pretty sure it was Harmony Week or something, and I ran through all these flags, and I said to her, Jess Malboy, I ran through a sea of flags to see you, which for anyone who knows, that's one of her Eurovision songs, and she started laughing, and then I went red, and I regretted every life decision I've ever made.
Hitting him with the dad jokes. No, I definitely never had a school celeb interaction. Mine was similar through work. I managed to wrangle one of the last interviews with the former PM Bob Hawke, which not even the coolest part though. He sang me Waltzing Matilda personally, only if he could keep his cigar lit while doing the interview. I kid you not. You can still Google this. So that is my claim to fame. That's about all I got.
I love that. And when we do Google it, we will drop a link to that in the broadcast channel for everyone to enjoy. Now, look, that brings our headlines to a close for today. Coming up next is my deep dive on the surprise generation saying yup to the cup, who they are and why they're smashing records come race day. Have a listen to that deep dive. It's coming up for you next. It's on the first Tuesday of every November, is watched by over 700 million people across more than 120 countries, has been around since 1876 and is billed as the race that stops the nation.
Set for the Melbourne Cup. Gates are back and they're racing.
We're talking the Melbourne Cup. It's the flagship race of Australia's horse racing industry, the same industry that's been recently reporting a rise in young people supporting a number of its biggest events, sometimes accounting for around 2/3 of those attending. And it's no accident. Gen Z's been in the sights of racing and betting giants, especially in this post-COVID era, with both industries becoming more competitive and seemingly PRing themselves out of negative headlines. And just this week, we've seen online gambling site Sportsbet reportedly express interest in acquiring popular Aussie satirical news site The Batuta Advocate, citing its, quote, unique position of trust among young Australian men aged 18 to 34, the same group that's at the highest risk of gambling harm in this country. Melissa Hoyer is a commentator who's been following the Cup for decades, and she joins me now. Melissa, welcome to the briefing. What have you noticed about young people's interest in the Melbourne Cup over the years you've been covering it?
It's extraordinary. I mean, youth have really gotten into going to the races. And that's interesting because it's sort of a double-edged sword with a lot of people because you've got, kids, and I'll refer to like 20 years, 21, 22 as kids. But a lot of them now, there's not a lot to do. There's not a lot of places they can go and sort of get dressed up. There's not a lot of places where they can actually have a day out as opposed to like going out at night. So, the races, they've been very clever in actually marketing a race day as sort of a fun day with a whole lot of friends. You can have a few drinks. You can, if you don't drink, you can still go. But you're actually seeing the daylight as opposed to getting home at 6 a.m. and seeing the daylight. You're actually seeing it, during the day, and you're actually out there enjoying a day. There's still some people who are thinking it's races. I don't want to be seen to be supporting the cruelty of races. And that's, everyone's own choice. But I think as kids have become a little bit more savvy and a bit more informed, they've actually thought, no, I don't want to be seen to be supporting something that, let's face it, in the past, there have been, horrendous accidents. There have been horses that have been put down after certain race days, which is horrendous. So what I have noticed, while a lot of people are out there putting on their social media with their new hat and their new outfit and their new fit, but there are some people who'll still go to the races, but they won't put it up at all on their social because it's sort of the perception, perhaps from their peers, isn't one to be sort of trumpeted.
We do have data that came out at the beginning of this week showing us some fresh insights into the harm associated here. So there is data showing that 175 racehorses have lost their lives from racing in Australia in the last 12 months. Do you know of what steps the racers or the clubs themselves are taking to kind of mitigate this harm? Because they say they are, but are they taking actual steps, and what are those steps?
My understanding is they certainly are, because the media that comes out each time a horse is put down or a horse is injured is extraordinary. We've all seen it. Each racing entity has to, no question, make sure they're dealing with credible trainers, credible jockeys, credible owners. So they're really very in tune with people who are putting horses up to go into races. So they don't just let any sort of mad person with a horse enter a race. There are absolute guidelines that people who are racing horses have to fit into in order to race their horse, especially, with younger people wanting to know about how well horses are treated. They've had to, no question, put in more guidelines so the horses that are racing are there through credible circumstances.
There's also a competitive side to this that New South Wales racing specifically has played a pretty big role in. What can you tell us about that?
I think we all growing up, we think of racing, we think of Melbourne Cup, bang. Suddenly then, other race days and race carnivals happened. New South Wales were very big at they're doing this thing called the Autumn Racing Carnival, which is back in March. So they really started to amp up autumn racing carnivals because, of course, the Melbourne Cup Carnival is a spring racing carnival. But in amongst all that, Peter V'landys, who runs the show in New South Wales, he concocted a race called the Everest, which just raced in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and it's become the wealthiest horse race, I think, in the world. So he's really tried to take the infamy of Melbourne Cup and bring it to Sydney, bring it to New South Wales. And certainly going by the numbers and going by the age group, the demographic that went to the Everest a few weeks ago, it was young. I mean, it was absolutely like a youth fest. So they're obviously doing something with their marketing that is seriously attracting youth. And that is, through really strong social media marketing. I mean, they've got a whole lot of influencers doing stuff. They've got a big presence on TikTok, all of those things that if you're trying to encourage anyone who's young to go to anything, bang, you have to be across all of those platforms. And they've been clever and they've done that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I've seen are DJ sets. I've also seen a singles event being marketed over the weekend in Sydney.
I saw that as well. Oh, yeah. But they're this kind of things that they're attracted to that because they're thinking, okay, I like that DJ. Okay, I'm single. We kind of, laugh at it, but seriously, laugh at it, but we think but that's great marketing because they're actually honing in on what young kids want. So all of those things, it's very clever from their part because, over the last 20, 30, 40 years, I suppose, racing has a perception of being something a little bit sort of grander, a little bit old school. And in order to grab a new market, no question, they have to get with the times. They have to know what youth want now, and they want to go to something that has a very strong marketing strategy that is aimed at them. That the kids don't want to think, oh, we're just an afterthought. So they've been very clever in marketing it to a whole new generation.
Is the promise of making a quick buck also front and centre when it comes to marketing to Gen Z?
No question. From fashion to fascinators to frocks. I mean, stores actually have, huge sort of pre-racing shopping nights so people can go and spend their bucks because they know the whole race carnival is one big money-making exercise. And that's aside from what you then spend when you are on the track. That's huge. I mean, I remember years ago, like in the Melbourne Cup carnival, they used to have even ships coming in from Sydney, as in cruise ships, going from Sydney to Melbourne. So that's like that 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people who then all went to Melbourne. They went and bought a frock that morning. They all went out. So you add all that up and, it ends up becoming like billions of dollars throughout the year.
We have recent data that's shown someone who's between the ages of 18 to 34 in Australia is at the highest risk of gambling harm in this country. To your knowledge, do racing clubs take stats like that into consideration when they're trying to appeal and hook young Australians to attend their events?
I don't know absolutely, but I would think they'd be silly not to. I mean, with any kind of addiction, it has to be potentially addressed. And gambling, and even drinking. I mean, everything has to be promoted, but not in excess. And that's why I think, we used to, not so much now, but we'd see all those shots of people absolutely sort of maggoted after the races, with their shoes over their shoulder, and which was sort of fun, and we'd all look and go, oh, isn't that funny? But everyone wants to have a good time. And if drinking is your choice, bang, go and do it. But I don't think racing's the establishment can't be seen to be promoting that. They haven't promoted big excess in gambling or drinking. Of course, you do it, but it's certainly not the reason you go to the races.
Horse racing isn't the only thing that we're seeing kind of booming at the moment or being revived at the moment. And it's not just limited to highly organised industries like this. We're seeing something similar surge at the moment with young people attending two-up events on Anzac Day right across the country. Any thoughts on why we're seeing that happening at the same time as a renewed interest in things like horse racing?
I think that there was a kind of a resurgence back to old school stuff, whether it is two-up. And what I love about people being interested in something like two-up, I hope that they're also learning about how and why it was done. So I think there is a bit of a nostalgic thing, and I think that's with races and with two-up. It's sort of, okay, it's something maybe that they might have seen their mum and dad do, or maybe dad used to sit sit in the kitchen on a Saturday with his race form and listening to the radio. And with two-up, my God, it's an extraordinary, well, I won't say celebration, but it's an acknowledgement of what our diggers went through. So it's sort of a resurgence of wanting to know a little bit more about our sort of social fabric, our social history.
And to take it a little bit more trivial, Melissa, it's also a celebration of the fact that you can make a couple $100 in a few seconds.
Exactly. And then the drinks are all on you. Yeah.
Melissa, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Absolute pleasure, Chris.
That was Melissa Hoyer speaking with me there. And that is it for this episode of The Briefing. If you enjoyed it or learned something new, why not flick it over to a mate? And while you're there, leave us a rate and a review. I'm Chris Spyrou. Catch you next time.